What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the shelf. And as the title of this video would suggest, today we are talking about A Christmas Horror Story from 2015. So if you're not familiar with this movie, A Christmas Horror Story is to Christmas what Trick or Treat is to Halloween, meaning that it is an anthology film and it tackles a lot of Christmas themes and motifs similar to Trick or Treat with Halloween under the anthology banner. So, in my opinion, Christmas is a holiday that lends itself to horror in some ways more than Halloween itself. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but hear me out. First of all, you've got the religious symbolism in there. You've got children in peril, the opposite of children opening presents. And you've also got the dangers and the real world horrors that can spring up out of things like holiday retail rage, which is a very real thing, specifically around like Black Friday and stuff. So all of that is present in A Christmas Horror Story, and that's part of what makes it so awesome. So yeah, this movie is just a real gem. I think it's pretty underrated as far as the pantheon of Christmas horror movies go. So today I'd like to shine a bit of a light on it and hopefully get some people to check it out. Although I'm guessing if you clicked on this, you've already seen it, which, awesome. But hopefully this can, maybe incentivize some people to go ahead and check it out. So yeah, today I'm going to break down sort of each segment. There's 4 segments, as well as a wraparound segment similar to a lot of anthology films that kind of ties them all together and bookends them. And yeah, it's good time. William Shatner's in it, so that's awesome if you're like a Star Trek fan. Yeah. A bit of a warning though, I am going to be getting into spoilers for every segment, so if you haven't seen the movie, then I would suggest going to check it out and then coming back here and watching this video, unless you don't care about spoilers, in which case feel free to go ahead and watch away. So unlike a lot of anthology films, A Christmas Horror Story kind of cuts back and forth from story to story throughout the course of the 90 or so minute runtime, rather than segments just starting and finishing and then starting and finishing. It's a little bit unorthodox, but I actually really enjoy it here because you never really get bored with one segment. You're always kind of jumping around, and the segments are kind of loosely related. We'll get into that, but they are related, and so it kind of gives context to each one, which is cool. And yeah, it's just an interesting sort of way to go about it. Some people don't like it, but I think it works really well given the context of these stories. But for this video, I will go one at a time and talk about each story in turn and kind of give my thoughts on them. And then at the end, I might even rank them just to kind of, for the hell of it. The awesome thing about A Christmas Horror Story is that each segment is kind of like its own genre of horror. The first one is like a ghost/possession story. The second is this sort of paranoid psychological thriller with mixed in with like a changeling story. The third story is kind of like a good old-fashioned slasher featuring Krampus. And the fourth story is an over-the-top splatterfest featuring Santa just brutalizing hordes of zombie elves. So yeah, this movie is awesome because it just has something for everybody. So despite all of them having sort of different tones, they really serve to elevate each other through the nature of the interconnected plots. So if that sounds like something you'd be into, then grab yourself a hot chocolate, turn the lights off and the Christmas lights on, and let's dive into A Christmas Horror Story and talk about what makes it so much bloody fun. So the segments don't actually have given names within the context of the movie, so I've went ahead and just kind of given them names that I feel are appropriate. And the first one is called The Convent. So this story sees a trio of teenagers who are involved in some sort of media reporting program at their school. It's all implied, it's never really gone into too much detail. But they are breaking into their school, which a year prior on Christmas Eve was the site of 2 brutal murders of 2 of their classmates. So their goal is to just kind of report on it and do a little think piece for presumably their school's newspaper or, TV news equivalent. I don't know. We're led to understand that this tragedy has sort of rocked this town. The town's called Bailey Downs, and that's where all of our stories take place, with the exception of one. We'll get into that. And as a matter of fact, one of the victims is the grandson of Dangerous Dan, who is the host of the movie and of the host of the wraparound segment at this local radio station. So anyway, some things happen, and the three of them are locked in the basement, presumably over the duration of winter break, which is like a week and a half. And yeah, they're stuck in there, and they don't know how they're going to get out. Through the course of this segment, we come to learn that back in the day, when the school was a convent, that there was a girl who seemingly became pregnant despite claiming to be a virgin, reminiscent of the Virgin Mary, who later went on to die during an abortion. I really dig this segment. It's got some really creepy, like, religious imagery from a nativity scene, as well as some stuff that happens towards the end. Something about schools and hospitals and places like that, places that typically have a lot of people in them, when there's nobody around and it's nighttime, it has this automatically, like, creepy effect to it, where it just feels unnatural, like something's wrong. So as I mentioned earlier, this segment's sort of like a ghost story and a possession story all in one, which is pretty cool. The only girl of our trio of teens, her name's Molly, she later becomes possessed by the ghost of the girl who died during their abortion years past. So it's implied that this ghost is possessing people so that she can have her baby be conceived finally, because it died in childbirth along with her. So yeah, she's trying to find hosts so that she can, you know, birth her baby into the world finally. It's like her unresolved conflict that's causing her to stick around. So yeah, after possessing Molly, some things happen, and Molly gets impregnated by one of the other boys. Yeah, it's not graphic or anything, but it's like, I don't know, it's got some icky kind of vibes to it. And then the ghost just kind of lets Molly go out into the world to eventually just kind of have her baby be born. And it's sort of like, what's the implications here? Like, is the baby the devil? You know, is he, you know, Jesus? Like, I don't know, probably not, because it's not that kind of story, but it's very cool. It's left ambiguous, which I dig. It's kind of has to be that way through the nature of the short story, but I think it also serves to elevate the story as well. It's implied that Connor and Jenna, those are the names of the two students who died a year prior. The ghost tried to get those two to bring the baby out into the world, but they failed, and then causing both of them to die. So this is sort of like a repeat of that situation happening. So yeah, with Christmas being Jesus's birthday, it makes sense that this segment is here. It's done well. I think it's done tastefully, as much as you can with the subject matter. Yeah, and it's cool that we tackle a little bit of that. It's not too heavy-handed, but it is a Christmas theme, and they've managed to weave it into this movie pretty well. So that's The Convent. Great story, really eerie stuff. I really like that segment a lot. The second story I have deemed The Changeling, because there's a changeling in it. So this segment follows a police officer named Scott Peters. Scott Peters was one of the first officers on the scene for the two murders that took place in the first segment. Having been involved with that, he's now suffering some PTSD and some unresolved trauma, which in turn has caused a strain on him and his family. So, you know, it's a year later, and Scott's really trying his best to kind of make things normal again. And so by doing so, he has this idea to take his family, his wife, and his son Will out into the woods to get themselves a Christmas tree. However, Scott makes the poor decision, doubly so as a police officer, to venture into some private property where the best trees are, I guess, because, you know, the ones around him aren't good enough. So they go into the private property, and that's where bad things happen. So yeah, after they go into the private property, they're looking around for a new tree, and then, you know, some things happen, and Will becomes lost, which causes Scott and his wife to panic a little bit. However, pretty quickly, Will reappears, and, you know, resolving the situation, they get their tree and they go home, except that they haven't actually taken Will home, they've taken a changeling home. So as this tale unfolds, it ends up with Will tragically killing Scott in a Christmas-themed sort of way, leaving his wife to take the changeling back to where they got him and trying to exchange it for her son. So the guy's private property, his name's Big Earl. I can't remember if I said that or not. Some things happen. Kim winds up shooting Big Earl and getting her son back. We find out that Big Earl just has like a shitload of these changelings on his property. He's kind of watches over them, implying a whole other like set of lore. Like that could have been its own entire story in itself, which would have been neat. So yeah, there's some decent world building there. So with Big Earl dead, all the changelings are set free. Kim gets her son back, and the two of them have a sort of happy ending. It's not really, because Scott's dead, but I suppose it could have been a lot worse. So yeah, I dig this one quite a bit as well. It's got lots of Christmassy woods atmosphere with a lot of snow, as well as the interiors associated with Christmas trees and Christmas lights, like a cozy, you know, Christmas Eve sort of deal. But it also presents this idea of your child being lost and then replaced with something like foreign and evil. I would imagine this is sort of an innate fear of parents, whether it's subconscious or conscious. Just the idea of losing a kid anytime, especially around Christmas, super terrifying. So I would imagine that any parents out there watching this would actually respond more to this one than I did. The real meat of this story, though, is how it deals with police officers and the trauma that they can sometimes encounter during their line of work. It also tackles like the problems that can come about from not seeking the proper therapy to kind of recover and like get over these things, and how that can cause like a strain on your family. So Scott was just traumatized by this ordeal, and it had this lasting like ripple effect on his family. Perhaps I'm reading too far into it, but you could almost look at Will being gone as a sort of echo of how Scott last year around Christmas was also gone. You know, he wasn't there. He was there, but mentally he wasn't there. So, you know, we glean from this segment that Scott likes to drink, and there's also an implication that in the past he's put his hands on Will before. Whether these are manifestations of, you know, his like trauma and stuff from the ordeal, or if they were present before, isn't stated, but it's definitely not there on accident, I would say. So, you know, him and his wife have these arguments where, you know, she says, you know, you said you could handle it, and, you know, she wants him to see doctors and get this thing taken care of, and he insists that everything's fine, which is, you know, I would imagine is very, you know, indicative of real world conversations. This is not a novel concept. These things happen. So despite on the surface this movie being like super silly and kind of campy, it's actually surprising how it tackles this very serious theme in a way that's sort of subtle, not very, but it would be, I could understand somebody not quite picking up on that with all the other Christmas changeling weird stuff going on. Yeah, and it also just kind of deals with this expectation that like people are supposed to be cheery around the holidays, and if they're not, it's going to bring down the people around them. So there's just like this unfair kind of pressure on people to, you know, just be happy when Scott is anything but. So that's the second segment. Time for the third segment. This one I have called Krampusnacht, or the Night of Krampus. Forgive me, my German accent is not very good. So the main character of this segment is named Caprice. She is actually friends with the trio of kids who are currently locked in the basement of the school. And if she didn't have to go visit her relatives with her family, she would probably be in that basement with them. So that's a cool little tie-in as well. But yeah, she's being forced to go visit her Aunt Etta for the holidays. So along with Caprice and her parents is her really shitty brother Duncan, who is like this little mini like serial killer. Like he's like a sociopath. Real fucked up kid. Got a very punchable face too. So once they get to Aunt Etta's house, we sort of realize that Aunt Etta is very German. She's very proud of her German heritage. She's got all these German sort of artifacts all around. And she's even got her own German caretaker named Gerhard.
Krampusnacht. The demon hunts the wicked from sunset to sunrise.
That's fun.
So, pretty German. So basically some stuff happens and Duncan is being like super shitty, just the shittiest kid you ever met, and he knocks over this Krampus figurine, which really upsets Gerhard. Like he's very upset about this. After that happens, Aunt Etta pretends to be like sick or whatever, when it's pretty clear that it's because of the incident with the figurine. But she's like, yeah, I'm not feeling well, you guys gotta go, despite them having just gotten there. So that's pretty irritating. So on their way back home, they're driving and they are attacked by this unseen assailant who we later learn is Krampus, and they wind up fleeing into the woods. This segment's pretty cool because it's got some like wintertime woods atmosphere with snow on the ground, similar to the previous one. It's really cool, it's really effective, and they're running from Krampus, who's just like brutalizing them. So we come to find out that Caprice's father is actually very broke, and the whole reason that they had to go visit Aunt Etta in the first place was so that they could ask her for some money, and not because she's just so much fun to be around. So yeah, this segment's pretty fun. Like I said, it kind of plays out like a slasher film with each member of Caprice's family getting picked off by Krampus one by one until she eventually winds up back at Aunt Edda's house. So once she gets there, it's revealed that the Krampus who's been killing her family is, surprise, none other than Gerhardt. So it's sort of implied that when Duncan broke the Krampus figurine, Aunt Edda knew that Gerhardt was going to turn into Krampus and like go rage mode and like kill them, which is why she made them leave. And yeah, she doesn't really care either. She's kind of just like, the whole thing's kind of like a minor inconvenience to her. So once Caprice finds this all out, Caprice herself turns into Krampus and kills Aunt Edda, presumably. Something interesting about this segment that I picked up on is that every member of Caprice's family seems guilty of like some sort of sin. It's revealed that Caprice is like a shoplifter and has been like stealing shit. Duncan, like I said, is like a sociopath. They talk about him like killing their pets and stuff. Their dad is guilty of like embezzlement, it's implied, and like misappropriation of funds. Just a kind of a shady businessman. The mom's only sin, as far as I know, is just kind of being like a bitchy Real Housewife kind of archetype. Doesn't quite fit with my whole thesis here, but it's all I got. So consequently, when Caprice's family, after their car accident, flees into a church to hide from Krampus, the church actually does double duty because not only can they hide there, but they kind of see it as this opportunity to confess their sins because they believe that's why Krampus is hunting them down. So after confessing their sins, they are able to become closer as a family, what members of the family are left by this point. But it's also a bit tragic because by this point it's just too late. To me, this segment also had some like suggested world building and lore. It's kind of implied that Caprice's family, through some sort of like Germanic heritage, has this maybe genetic ability to transform into Krampus in moments of like extreme anger or distress. None of this is overtly stated, but it can be inferred by the audience, which is what's fun about this movie. So yeah, something that's relatable here too is that during Christmas time, it's not uncommon for people to have to go and see family that maybe they only see once a year. And, you know, it's not exactly how they'd love to spend the holiday, but they kind of have to do it. They feel this obligation to do it. So yeah, that's a common theme that's pretty, you know, relevant and relatable. So obviously it's like heightened here for dramatic effect, but the point is still the same, being that you can love your family, but you don't necessarily have to like them. So that's the third segment. Time for the fourth and final segment, not including the wraparound, which I don't really include because it's kind of like the glue that holds this all together. But yeah, the fourth segment I have once again aptly named The North Pole because it's about Santa, and he's at the North Pole. So yeah, this one follows Santa. They're preparing for a busy Christmas. Everyone's helping out, you know, all the elves are making toys, and even Mrs. Claus is helping out by bringing out some very warm and delicious looking Christmas cookies for everybody to enjoy. And now I want cookies. So yeah, everything's going really well. The vibes are high, you know, everyone's feeling jolly, until one of his elves becomes like overcome with this fit of rage and kind of like just starts freaking out.
I said I don't want a goddamn cookie! You reindeer fucking snow!
I don't know. So yeah, he becomes a zombie, indicating that there's some sort of virus going on right now, which is not chill. You know, it's Christmas time. You don't want to be sick around Christmas. So yeah, this zombie virus infects all the other elves, resulting in Santa having to kill all his elves in extremely over-the-top, Christmas-related ways. It is honestly some of the most fun in the entire movie.
You cocksucker!
So yeah, this one is very visually distinct from the other ones. The other segments are all set in or around the town of Bailey Downs, and this one is set at the North Pole. So this is something that could be easily missed or like not placed a lot of like significance on, but after you've seen this movie once and you know what's going on, it actually sort of recontextualizes this whole segment. So you'll know what I'm saying in a minute, just bear with me. So after Santa kills all his zombie elves, he comes face to face with the person who's responsible for all of this, and it is none other than Krampus.
I knew it. Krampus. Vile enemy of Christmas.
So yeah, you know, they're going at it, you know, just fucking really trying to mess each other up. And after this intense duel, Santa is about to strike the killing blow on Krampus, when suddenly...
Norman, stop! Please don't kill me, Norman.
Norman? Who's Norman?
What the fuck is wrong with you, Norman?
We cut to a Christmas mall during a food drive. It's a bloody scene with a lot of dead bodies. And instead of Santa, we're looking at local weatherman Norman, aka Stormin' Norman. And instead of Krampus about to be murdered, we're looking at the mall's manager, Mr. Taylor. So Norman is the weatherman at the radio station that Dangerous Dan works at. He has suffered a psychotic break and comes to believe that he is Santa and has been murdering all these people at this food drive under the impression that they are like zombie elves. So this is the last segment. It takes, this revelation happens like right at the end. Throughout the film, we have been getting updates by Dangerous Dan at the radio station, that's the wraparound segments, about the fact that there is this disturbance at the food drive. And we don't know what that disturbance is until right here at this moment when it's revealed that Stormin' Norman has been killing people. So with the knowledge that this has all been happening at the mall of the town where a year prior there was 2 murders and now, it's implied that there's like at least a dozen murdered, this segment goes from like really campy and fun to like really dark and tragic. Yeah, and it just sort of gets into like the whole topic of like mental illness, and similar to the Changeling segment about the police officer with his PTSD, this guy has suffered just a psychotic break. This is the extreme end of the spectrum. Yeah, and it happened around Christmas, a not very chill time for that to happen. Yeah, so around Christmas time, people actually become, very depressed, be it because they lost family and the time reminds them of their family, and there's a whole litany of reasons why. So yeah, it's actually, despite on the surface being very cheery and fun, there's a lot of people who just aren't having a good time at all. Stormin' Norman being one of them. I really admire A Christmas Horror Story for like tackling this subject matter in the context of this like crazy, silly, over-the-top segment. It's really like admirable, I would say, and something that I was surprised at after kind of watching this several times and really starting to pick up on the themes. So yeah, as far as Christmas horror goes, this one is just one of my favorites. I have a tradition where every December 1st, I like to put this movie on, and I like wrap Christmas presents, and I drink a nice Christmas beer, and it's all just a great way to like get me excited about the month. I only watch Christmas movies, be it Christmas horror or just regular Christmas movies. I only watch them in the month of December, which makes them feel more special to me, and it's something that I look forward to. So yeah, Christmas Horror Story is an annual staple for me. I watch it every year. It's just so much fun. It's serious, but it's also not. You can kind of just have fun with it. It does deal with real themes of like mental illness and PTSD and like family and religion, and all of it's handled so subtly, and it's one of those movies that's just really easy to overlook, and people kind of write it off as being like, just silly. So before I go, I'll just rank the segments real quick for you guys, if you were at all curious. In 4th place, I'd have to go Krampusnacht, or the Night of Krampus. All the characters are pretty unlikable in this one, and the slasher stuff it does is like pretty by the numbers slasher stuff. It's nothing groundbreaking, so this one's last for me. In 3rd place, I'll go with The Changeling. Really like the way it tackles, like I've said a couple times already, the themes of the mental illness and the PTSD with Scott Peters, under the context of like this family that's kind of being torn apart. In 2nd place, I'll go The North Pole. Santa murdering his elves and like their gross profanity is like some of the most fun in this entire movie. It's something to behold. It's truly glorious. The twist also really ties the whole movie together, and I'm afraid that like this movie would not work without that twist. It is so awesome. And in 1st place, I'll go with The Convent. I think this is easily the scariest of all the segments. Really eerie stuff having to do with like the empty school and the basement, and yeah, it's just good stuff. So there you have it, folks. That is A Christmas Horror Story from 2015. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully you have seen this movie and you like it as much as I do. If that's the case, let me know in the comments below which one of these segments is your favorite, which is your least favorite. Did I help you to think about the movie in a way that you hadn't thought about it before? That'd be cool to know. Yeah, leave all that down in the comments. I've got a bunch of different Christmas videos planned for the month of December, so if you liked this, like and subscribe, all that fun stuff. And yeah, with that in mind, take care, and watch some Christmas horror movies.